Welcome to the Paper Valley Model Railroad Club. Located near Appleton, Wisconsin, it is one of the oldest existing model railroad clubs in the United States. The club has layouts in both O and HO scales with award-winning scenery and structures and state-of-the-art digital control systems. The Paper Valley Model Railroad Club got its start in 1936, when Carol Richmond, a member of the YMCA Junior Board of Directors, was put in charge of hobbies. Carol was fascinated with trains and decided to start a small model railroad club. Carol recalls, "We started with a small layout, located between the secretary's office and the billiard room at the old Appleton YMCA. This first layout had only 2 loops of track and was about 20 feet square with no yards or sidings. The kids were all enthused until they found out they had to cut ties and lay rail by hand. A lot of them lost interest when they found out they had to work at it." The club survived the Y for 3 years, then disbanded due to lack of interest. Carol Richmond started searching for a new group, and in 1940 advertised in local papers and hobby magazines for anyone in the area interested in trains. His effort attracted a number of interested Appleton area modelers. The club soon reformed as an armchair club, meeting at various members' homes to discuss a permanent location for the club. But this was the 1940s, and there was a war going on, so affordable space was scarce. In February of 1943, the club investigated the possibility of locating a permanent space in the basement of the Conway Hotel. In 1944, the deal was done. The lease was signed, and a new layout began to take shape. The new O-scale layout was about 30 feet long, with a double-track figure-8 plan on 2 levels. The pike was cramped and they had little room for visitors. The outside stairs leading to the layout were in poor condition, and the upstairs tavern sink leaked into the basement. The members installed a waterfall to divert the water away from the tracks. The war ended in 1945, and talks of a better location began. The club was able to secure a lease of the old Chicago Northwestern Railroad depot located on South Oneida Street in the River Flats of Appleton. The old Ashland Division depot of the Chicago Northwestern Railroad was built in 1881 to serve the Milwaukee Lakeshore Northern Railroad. This line was built from Milwaukee to Manitowoc and on into Appleton. It extended north through Anago, Ashland, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. At one time, this was the railroad's main Appleton depot. Although the building's structure was in poor condition and it had heating problems, the club decided to lease it and began remodeling in 1947. They rebuilt the interior of the station, eliminating the old walls between the agent office, waiting room, and the baggage room. This left one large room for a layout with an overlooking cage-type balcony for visitors and the operating crew. It provided 2,048 square feet of layout space for a new O-scale layout, based loosely on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad Ashland Division operations. The Paper Valley Model Railroad Club was incorporated with the state of Wisconsin on May 10, 1946. By 1948, construction began with ties being cut, O-scale rails being hand-laid, and switches being built. By the time the track work was done, club members used over 10,000 ties, 124,000 spikes, and laid over 5,300 feet of track. In 1950, the Oshkosh Model Railroad Club came and helped club members, and over 10,000 ties were laid in one night. On October 13, 1950, the golden spike of the main line was driven, and the railroad was humming with trains. To power the layout, the club installed a big bank of surplus batteries from the local phone company. Later, Miller Electric donated transformers and rectifiers. The transformers were too small, so the club obtained a huge transformer from the Fond du Lac Phone Company. Carol recalled that the thing weighed a ton. as he and Al Ayers hauled it from Fond du Lac. But the transformer worked and provided 18 volts to the common rail. 7 control panels fed 25 miles of wire on the layout. The dispatcher would instruct Cab A to operate the westbound routes and Cab B to operate the eastbound routes.
Ever hear about the railroad where the vice president of the line is a Gandhi dancer, driving steel spikes into the ties? Where steam and wood-burning engines do a full day's work alongside sleek, modern diesels? Well, that railroad is the Paper Valley Line at Appleton, Wisconsin. And at this moment, we're standing in the midst of the Central Rail Terminal. But about that steel-driving vice president, here he is, Carroll Richmond of Appleton. What's the story here?
Well, this happens to be a model railroad, the Paper Valley Model Railroad.
And of course, everybody lends a hand in repairing stock, laying track, doing all the other maintenance that we normally associate with the railroad. Carroll, how long has the Paper Valley Model Railroad been rolling?
About 20 years, Bill.
I understand it's one of the largest in the nation.
We believe that it is, yes.
Insofar as your stock and equipment and your buildings are concerned, could you give us a few figures on that?
Sure. The railroad has about 27 and 3/10 scale miles of track. It's about 110 feet per mile, roughly 3,000 feet actual in track. We have about 35 locomotives, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 cars on the track. There are 107 turnouts or switches, as we commonly call them. We've driven about 26,000 spikes and some 32,500 ties, if you can understand railroad jargon.
Now, this is quite an elaborate operation. How many control panels are necessary to keep the Paper Valley Model Railroad in operation?
We have 7 panels, Bill. A dispatcher, 2 engineers, and then the panels for the various yards and roundhouse areas and so on.
And you need several men to operate all of them when the railroad is in full operation.
That's right.
You have a rather unusual location. Tell us about that.
We're located, Bill, in the abandoned Chicago Northwestern Depot on the Ashland Division, which is located, as we call it, in the flats. The depot, just to give you an idea of size, is 32 feet by 64 feet.
And I might add at this point that the Paper Valley Model Railroad occupies the entire building. Carroll, one final word. As vice president of the line, do you think we have enough pull to take a tour?
We're glad to take you along. We might even let you pull the throttle on one of the big diesels.
And so, with a little imagination, we'll board a 16-car O-gauge passenger, complete with a dome-topped observation car that'll take us on a tour of the Paper Valley Model Railroad. Like a prototype road, trains on the PV and RR operate religiously on established schedules. Incidentally, we're waiting for number 114, the 400 on the eastbound track. We'll be officially on board when the club's conductor yells out an official...
Good. Well, Bill, I guess we better get on. We're ready to roll.
That's Carroll Richmond, our host and our guide, vice president of the Paper Valley Road, and here we go. Carroll, I see we're going through the railroad yards, and I see a train here, the Lutz Brothers Circus. What's the story behind this circus train? They're a rarity these days.
George Lutz and has 3 boys, and this is the Lutz Brothers Circus.
And I might add that George Lutz is one of the members of the Paper Valley Road. And here goes another train. It's loaded with a lot of logs. What's its destination?
That is the paper train, as we term it. It's loaded with logs, sulfur, clay, oil. It's heading for the paper mill, which you see in the extreme west end of the layout.
While we're just riding along here looking at the scenery, and I might point out that there are bridges that we are going over, and if your imagination is good, there's forests, rivers, you name it, the Paper Valley Road has it. But I wonder about one thing. This being a model railroad, Carroll, are there any actual railroad men in it?
No, there aren't. Many years ago, we had one railroad man, but there haven't been any railroad men in for years.
I would say offhand that a railroad man belonging to a railroad club would be almost the same thing as a mailman taking a walk on Sunday.
That's right.
I understand we have one more stop before our journey is over today, and I think that's to the Brain Center.
That's right, Bill. We'd like to take you over to Tower L, where you will see some of the control panels with the fellows that work at them.
And when we arrive at Tower L, you'll discover the control equipment at Cape Canaveral has nothing over the control equipment here on the Paper Valley Model Railroad. As a touch of authentic railroading, Tower L is actually the former dispatcher's booth. Now let's talk to the engineer of number 114, the train we just left. He's Lewis Phillips, and Lou, what do you do with all of these switches here?
Well, this particular board I'm operating is called the Cab A, which controls one of the trains going on the main line. Now, I have controls of all the blocks on this particular section or line, and I can stop, start, reverse, speed up, slow down my train in any particular section of the track that I want to.
In other words, Lewis, you can do anything an engineer can do in his cab.
That's right.
Individual members, there are 18 steam locomotives, 16 diesel.
The public address system you hear in the background is the club's conductor, who points out the various scenic highlights along the route of the PV and RR, and also explains the operation of the road to spectators located in the gallery on the east end of the building.
The third Friday of every month was known as Operating Night. Club members recall that many area folk brought their kids down to the club and put them in the cage balcony while they shopped, picking them up around 9 p.m. when the stores closed. The club began its annual tradition of open houses in 1950. This was done as a fundraiser and gave the public a chance to see the layout. This tradition continues today. By the late 1970s, the club was beginning to run into problems. The old depot was in great state of disrepair. The floor was so warped that the club had to jack up the layout several times to keep it level. In 1987, a real estate company purchased the building and gave the club until the end of the year to vacate the premise. They dismantled the 40-year-old layout and sold most of the O-scale items to former members. The club went back to being an armchair club, meeting at various members' homes. In 1988, member Francis Kozlowski donated an HO layout for the club to work on. Each module measured 2 feet by 4 feet with larger corner modules, and they began working on this new layout in Frank's basement. So once again, the club began promoting for new members through flyers at area hobby stores. In late 1990, the club was able to lease a storefront in the Valley Fair Mall. They set up the modules as a club layout and continued to work on them. Membership grew rapidly. In 1995, the Valley Fair Mall decided that the storefront could be used for more money-making tenants. So the club packed up the modules and moved to a space in the downtown Appleton Mall. Meanwhile, one of the members approached the club about leasing an old radio station on Block Road in Kaukauna. The station was using the building for a transmitter and towers, but the rest was empty and falling into a state of disrepair. Even though it was not located in Appleton, the price was right, and the club packed up once again. The club moved into the building in late 1995 and began cleaning up the mess. Walls were knocked down, mice and rats were cleaned out, and 6 months were spent on just cleaning up after the last tenant. The club began building a large HO layout, and by November 1996 it held an open house, a tradition going back to 1950. Since that time, the HO layout has expanded into 3 large rooms and is now fully operational. It features award-winning scratch-built structures, many industrial switching areas, several large yards, a large harbor area, and a branch line that feeds into a mining area. In 2001, the club began to work on a large O-scale 3-rail layout in the basement of the clubhouse. Measuring 42 feet by 30 feet, this layout features a double-track main line and many scenic features, including an airport.
we're in for a lot of fun out here today because, well, we're going to take you on a tour with some trains. And Dennis, this club, the Fox Valley Model Railroad Club, has been around since 1930, is that right?
That's right. They started out, I think, in the old Conway Hotel in the basement. And they were with the YMCA youth group for a little while. And then finally, I believe it was in the late 40s when they took over an old depot down in the flats. And we've got a model of it stuck in the corner of the layout up here in our town. The little building out behind the train now, but the little green building is a model of the old depot that was down there.
And so you guys kind of have this sectioned off. This is sort of a replica of the Appleton-ish area, and you've got one of Kaukauna and Green Bay. You even have a room that we're going to look at later of Milwaukee.
Yeah, the idea here was it would kind of, our make-believe railroad, if you have one, it kind of runs, the northern end is Green Bay and the southern end is Milwaukee. So we tried to pick towns that, you know, relate to the area. And although they're not exact models, we kind of have fun with it. So,
Dennis, what I can't get over is the detail you guys put into this. This part that we're looking at right here is part of the Kaukauna area, a replica of it.
We kind of put in a paper mill and tried to simulate some of that. Some of these kits are made out of plastic. Others are just made out of cardboard and whatever we can find around in our basements. And you know, everybody kind of chips in. Some guys are better at modeling, and some guys are better at just plain running the trains. And so
how does this, work? You guys kind of just there's about 30 members in the club.
Yep.
And you guys just kind of say, oh, I have an idea about this, or I have an idea about this, and...
Sort of, yeah. we do that. We just kind of throw it out, and we'll try it. And the nice thing is if it doesn't work, you tear it out and start over. It's plaster and paint, and the track, sometimes you can salvage, so...
How many different trains can you run on these tracks? How many different tracks? Lots.
Haven't quite found the limit. Theoretically, I think it's 99 at this time. We've got a new control system that we're trying.
Well, Paul is going to explain, I think, an area that a lot of people are going to recognize over there. I think it's now called the Titletown Brewing Company.
That is correct. This used to be the Chicago Northwestern passenger station in downtown Green Bay. One of our members, Dennis Fredericks, scratch built that model. He has won awards. It's really a beautiful model of the building. He spent a lot of time doing that one.
Now, this is kind of, explain this area right here. I think a lot of people recognize this.
We do a lot of switching. We do run operating sessions out here at the club where we switch a lot of the cars. And this is a harbor area, just kind of not really modeled after Green Bay, but it is, and it's a lot of fun to switch. And most people come out here, they wouldn't really understand how that works, but the switchbacks and stuff in there makes it real challenging.
Now, let's take a quick look in the other room, which is the Milwaukee area. And there again, that was made by hand.
Yes, again, Dennis Fredericks, our master scratch builder, that is the old Milwaukee Road Depot in Milwaukee. Used to be down on Clybourne Street, pretty close to where the Amtrak station is now. Absolutely gorgeous Gothic passenger station. Was built in the turn of the century. They tore it down in the 70s, which is too bad. They probably should have left it up. It's just a beautiful building.
So how do you do the scenery, Paul? How do you do that?
Well, there's no tried and true way. There's a lot of different things to do, but we use a lot of styrofoam and plaster. We carve out the styrofoam and put the plaster on and buy the materials for the ground cover. The trees that you see, a lot of these are weeds that we actually pick out of the back fields.
Okay, there you go.
And all sorts of, there's so many different ways of doing things. The nice thing about scenery is if it doesn't turn out, you can tear it out and do it over again.
Start all over again.
That's right.
Well, explain a little bit about this area that we're looking at here.
Well, we modeled the hills in here. It's all sorts of different scenery techniques. Some of these are rock molds. Some of the hills are carved by hand. We just kind of wanted to get a little vertical depth to the layout, and I think it turned out pretty neat.
Your Amtrak's clear to go.
If not for the determination of longtime club members Carol Richmond, Louis Phillips, and Les Mansky, the club probably would have folded years ago. Instead, the Paper Valley Model Railroad Club thrives today with a large membership and state-of-the-art layouts.
For a 417 departure, we had 3 loads and 97 empties.